Hello, hello, hello. Welcome to another Ellen Moon tutorial. Finally, we are going to make a macrame crown, a snow princess macrame crown or boho macrame crown. You will need to cut 18 cords. You will need to place them in groups of 6, 3 groups of 6. If you want to make it like the picture in the beginning, you will need to cut way more cords because you will need to have it was like 10 or 12 groups of 6 cords and 3 rows of double half hitches. I'm going to show you to do 2 rows of double half hitches here. It looks just as good, honestly. That one I did on a whim. So your outer cords are going to measure 16 inches and your inner cords are going to measure 12. All right, so remember the measurements are that I posted before. Before I folded them in half, they will be outer cords 32 inches and inner cords 24 inches respectively. So I'm starting with a double half hitch, specifically a double half horizontal hitch moving to the right. I'm starting with cord number 1. Cord number 1 is the actual filler cord. Cords 2, 3, 4, 5, and 6 will be the working cord because they're doing all the work. They're going around and around. A double half hitch. Once I do the first 6 cords, with 1 being the filler cord, I'm going to take cord number 12 on the outer edge, the last cord of the first cluster or grouping of 12. And number 12 will be the filler cord this time. I will double half hitch it, moving inwards to the left. And cords number 11, 10, 9, 8, and 7 will double half hitch onto cord number 12. Then we will make a point at the bottom with cord number, I like to make mine all go right since I'm right-handed. So cord number 1 will double half hitch over cord number 12 or vice versa. It doesn't really matter. You just need to get a point. You need to marry them like that at the bottom. So you have 2 separate halves. You're going to put them together. I'm trying to see which way here that I will do that. Okay, yep. I did 12 over cord number 1. So double half hitch cord number 12 over 1. Now we're going to move to the side and we need to make another row. And we've numbered all the cords 1 through 12. So I'm starting with filler cord number 1 again. I'm going to go 2, 3, 4, 5, 6 on the double half hitch. And then I'll go over to cord number 12 and make it filler cord again in the second V cluster or triangle cluster. And then I'll make 1 more with the 3rd grouping. If you want the crown to look exactly like the picture that I posted, that's the face of this with me wearing it in the beginning, you will need to do several triangles. I think I did a total of like 8 to 10 to go all around, but that's not really necessary, especially if you want something that ties in the back. In that first picture, I used a hoop, and so the hoop just placed it on my head. So yeah, you can do this and just tie it around. I have this on a piece of black ribbon so you can see where it's mounted. And I'm just going to do double half hitch. This project shouldn't take you very long. I'd say it takes about, after you do the cutting of the rope, which is the most tedious thing to me, I'd say it should take you around, I'd say about 45 minutes to 1 hour of doing the knots. And then you need to cut and trim, so 1 hour and a half. You'll have to let it dry though. You have to let after you put the Mod Podge glue on, which dries clear, you'll need to let it dry for quite a bit, depending on if your house is super hot or cold or moisture. You can give it a day, or it could take a few hours if you're in somewhere like Arizona or Colombia. So that's about it. I'm using double-stranded rope, which I'm going to untwist later. It was actually tri-braided, so there's 3, but I pulled out the 3rd one because I was going to use it for another project, and I'm cheap on rope because it can be expensive. So yeah, after I do this next triangle, I'm going to show you how to marry them all together. Here's an important how to join them.
So in order to join it all and to make it into a cohesive crown, you'll need to take the cord number 11, which is the final cord in the first V, and you're going to double half hitch it over the first cord, which is the number 2 cord in the second cluster, over that one. So 11 is going to double half hitch over cord number 2 from the second V. And you're just going to go on down the line with each piece from the first triangle or V. And then what you're going to do next is you're going to move over to in between clusters 2 and 3 and do a similar thing. So you'll take the last cord of the triangle, second triangle, and you'll double half hitch it over the crisscrossed first cord of the third triangle, as I'm doing here. You need to have 2 rows of V's is what you need on each particular cluster of triangles. So I wanted to point this out because if you leave them alone and you don't take one from triangle 2 and marry it with triangle 1 and triangle 3 and marry it with triangle 2, like crisscrossing the center chords, then it won't look right and they'll all be separated. So I'm just going to continue doing that, and then I'm going to speed this up. And just remember, it is chords 11 and the chord number 2 in each of triangle 1 and 2, because we already used number 1 and number 12 from the first cluster, and we used number 1 and 12 for the second and third, because those were our starting filler chords. So they're already at the bottom tip there. They've made the point at the bottom. It doesn't matter if you work left or right first when you're doing the initial parts of the second row of the triangle. I'm right-handed, so I tend to go right first as opposed to left. Maybe it's different if you're left-handed. Now it's time for Mod Podge glue, which dries clear, to comb or brush if you have a wire toothbrush, and to cut and measure. We're going to measure 2 inches from the bottom for our fringe effect, because remember there's fringe on this wonderful boho crown.
and I'm going to cut across. I need to unfurl my twisted braided rope. If you use 2 mm, 3 mm, 4 mm, 5 mm, it's fine. What mine ends up being is like 2 or 3, actually 3 mm. So the measurements are for 3 mm. So I'm just going to untwist them. But like I said, you can use single strand, but you can just watch the process, and you will need to let it dry for a day once I have all the glue on it. I'm just measuring right here, and I'm going to speed this part up.
watching. See you in the next video, I hope.